Former President Donald Trump's legal battle over the 2020 election rages on. Over the weekend, his attorneys asked an appeals court to throw out the election subversion, a case against him. That followed a victory for Trump and his legal team when the Supreme Court rejected special counsel Jack Smith's bid to fast-track hearings on Trump's claim of presidential immunity. So that leaves it in the appeals court's hands and potentially delays the trial's March 4th start date. Critics like former Director of National Intelligence John Ratcliffe says that Smith's pursuit of swift justice is a partisan ploy to keep Trump out of the White House.
I would argue that Jack Smith lost more than just a legal issue at the Supreme Court. He lost credibility. I think that this was nakedly partisan and overtly political, and it was revealed, to the Supreme Court that that's how Jack Smith is operating.
David Spunt is in Washington with more on this. Hey, David.
Hey, Julie. The former president says the charges should be dropped because he's covered by absolute immunity. His legal team made these arguments in a late Saturday night filing that he's immune from federal prosecution, because he was president at the time of the alleged crimes. On page 19 of the 71-page filing to the D.C. Court of Appeals, his team writes, in part, President Trump has absolute immunity from prosecution for his official acts as president. The indictment alleges only official acts, so it must be dismissed. The former president's attorney general, William Barr, over the weekend gave his thoughts on this claim that Trump is indeed immune. Watch.
If you're performing an official function, the president has absolute immunity, and I think that has to be protected. I support that. The real question here is what was the function he was performing when he was doing these things after the election? And the government's position is going to be that he was a candidate. He was acting as a candidate, not really as president.
And the plea comes to the appeals court after the Supreme Court declined to jump ahead of the appeals court in the line and hear arguments over whether or not the former president is immune. The Supreme Court may still hear arguments, Julie, but that would be after the appeals court does on January 9th. Now, this is clearly a delay for special counsel Jack Smith. It likely means the March 4th trial will be pushed back. He wanted it to happen March 4th, the day before Super Tuesday. But now this appeals court hearing on January 9th could push things back, especially if the Supreme Court could possibly hear arguments even later in the spring, perhaps early summer. Julie.
All right. David Spunt, thank you so much. Kerri Kupec Urbahn, Fox News legal editor, joins me now. She also served as director for public affairs for Attorney General Bill Barr. Thank you so much for talking to us. Let's first talk about whether you believe that the president and his attorneys are accurate when they state that he should be immune because of the alleged crimes that he is being accused of occurred while he was president. Would you agree?
Well, there's longstanding precedent in our system of law that a president does enjoy absolute immunity when operating and performing their official duties. And so the question before these courts is, in the weeks around the election and in the weeks leading up to January 6th, was he operating in his official capacity as president, or was he acting as a person campaigning to be reelected? If he was acting as a person campaigning to be reelected, that would not be considered official duties as president of the United States. So it's an interesting question, one that has not been examined before. So it will be interesting to see how the courts decide on that issue.
There's also the Colorado State Supreme Court decision to block Trump from the ballot in that state. Senator Ron Johnson reacted this way, and then I'll have you react.
Well, radical leftism has infiltrated every institution of this country, our courts, our education system, government agencies. It's a real problem. That's what needs to be rooted out, radical leftism.
In the meantime, there are more than a dozen other states that are considering similar measures. So at this point, if Colorado takes Trump's name off of the primary, okay, and then all these other states do, they're basically having a say in the future election. This obviously is going to fall in the hands of the Supreme Court, but right now it's in the appeal. What's the next state at this point? Do you actually see the Supreme Court getting involved here and actually supporting this or slapping this down? Because it seems like it would be a very difficult thing for Colorado to get away with.
So the Supreme Court has full discretion as to whether they take up a case or not. In fact, they take up less than 1% of the petitions that are submitted to them each year. So, one never really wants to predict what the Supreme Court will do. But in this specific case of Colorado, unilaterally taking away the choice of Donald Trump from its voters, you'd think that the Supreme Court would probably get involved just because it's such an outrageous use of power by a handful of judicial officers, and it's the likes of which we have not seen. And Julie, one thing that I just keep coming back to as I think about this situation is that Donald Trump has not been charged and convicted anywhere in this country of insurrection or incitement. In fact, the federal government, Jack Smith, and who's been pretty aggressive in his case against Trump, has not brought that charge. So this man has not been charged nor convicted of this. And with respect to Colorado, what kind of fact-finding did they engage in? What kind of due process occurred? It seems like basically none. And the fact that a few citizens could get together, go to a court and say, hey, there's this provision in the Constitution that we think applies against the front runner, the GOP front runner, and he should be removed from the ballot. And we should, make sure that our fellow citizens can't vote for this person. And the court says, yeah, you know what? That sounds good. Let's go with that. I mean, it's outrageous. That's not how justice works in this country. Yeah, no, he is still in the court process. He has not been convicted of anything. And therefore, for the state of Colorado to assume he's been convicted of anything just seems absolutely unlawful. But former President Trump is facing 4 separate criminal trials, speaking of. The USA Today actually calling it a juggling act, quote, the traffic jam of 4 criminal trials pending against Donald Trump has left prosecutors and judges struggling to get any of them moving while avoiding collisions. The result leaves open the question of which, if any, will begin before the November election. Now, there is pretty much no way that this is going to start on time. March 4th, I mean, Jack Smith wanted to start then. That is not looking likely whatsoever. Obviously, this is a victory for the Trump camp because they want to stall this as much as possible. This is very likely going to end up running into the presidential election. What happens if that's the case? And not just the election. There's a lot of focus on November, understandably, because the stakes are very high, and that's what the stakes are. But DOJ has this internal policy that they're very, very particular about. And that's a policy that basically says that DOJ officials, attorneys, et cetera, should not be engaging in any kinds of acts, overt acts, even acts that aren't seen that could potentially impact an election. And typically, the Attorney General sends out a memo in May reminding DOJ employees of this policy. Attorney General Garland has done that. Attorney General Bill Barr has done that, the same memo. So when people are thinking about, well, Jack Smith, a prosecutor in this case, has until November, I would guess that he and his team are thinking, well, actually, we kind of have until May and June, given our own internal policy, because if they violate that policy, that's going to be a huge problem as well. And I believe that it actually helps the Trump campaign if you look at him as the presidential candidate, because if you take a look at his poll numbers, in fact, all these criminal trials seem to be helping him, which is not your usual reaction for anyone who's facing a criminal trial. No, it certainly has been helping him. And again, given this policy that people inside the Justice Department are very particular about, I remember it very clearly being there, they're thinking about May and June. So that shortens the timeline even more. Yeah. All right. Well, it's certainly keeping us on our toes. Thank you very much, Kerri Kupec Urbahn, for talking to us. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.